Imagine a pair of jhumkas. They can be found on a roadside stall, they can be found in a proper shop and maybe even a mall. Let's talk about the price around it. 200, 500, 800 or maybe a couple of thousands. But when it goes on the international runway, it wouldn't be coming in thousand, it might be touching some certain lakhs when it is associated with global brands. So when we are talking about these regional attires, when we are talking about textiles and artistic generation of traditions that we have, these are something that has been done with culture and pain over the years. But when we talk about this hard work over the global runway, there is no recognition of the culture, no recognition of the work that has gone by the artisans. And that is where it becomes problematic. And that is where it raises the debates about cultural appropriation, the protection of artisans, and also about intellectual property rights. Hello everyone, welcome to Vajiram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh and today we are going to talk about cultural appropriation. This has come to highlight because of the recent incident at the Paris Fashion Week where we saw the jhumkas, which are so common in Indian culture, being presented on the runway as a accessory, a random accessory, a costume. But the culture behind it, the artisans' effort behind it had no credit attached to it. And this is not the first time that this is happening. Back in last year, we were talking about Kolhapuri chappals which were picked up by Prada. They were displayed, they were brought out as the new fashion statement. But the credit lacking. However, later Prada realized the mistake and gave the credit to the Kolhapuri artisans. And there are multiple such other incidents that we can count, not just associated with Indian culture, but other cultures as well. So this is where we need to understand the first thing, that is what exactly is cultural appropriation before we get to understanding the debate around it. So when we are talking about cultural appropriation, it is basically when we use cultural elements of any community without their permission, without giving them any credit or attributing it to them. So the idea of that particular thing is detached away from what history, what culture it carries. It is just displayed as a costume. As you can see in the given image, culture is not displayed like culture, it is displayed like costume. Be it the jhumkas, be it the scarves. Because in another recent scenario that we saw last year was about Banarsi brocade, which was shown without any credit yet again. So these are the places where the appearance of the costume or the textile is not highlighted with the community it comes from, with the community it comes from, with the culture it comes from. And this is exactly what cultural appropriation is, where you are using a thing from a particular community but you haven't asked for the permission, you are not giving them credit, you are not giving them compensation, they are not giving any attribution as well. So when we look at the common forms in fashion, be it traditional clothing designs, indigenous jewelry patterns or textile motifs, embroidery, folk symbols, heritage arts, when they are presented but their cultural design, their origin, that is erased. That design is commercialized by a certain powerful brand and economic benefits are not given to the original community or the creator. That is when it becomes cultural appropriation. And now I think you will be able to understand why the presentation of jhumkas at the Paris Fashion Week is a problem. Why Prada taking up Kolhapuri chappals and associating them with the costume is a problem. Why Banarasi brocade not going by the name itself, rather being picked up as Scandinavian scarves. Tribal prints being used by global designers. All of this fits into the idea of cultural appropriation. Now you might have in your mind that what is the problem with cultural appropriation? Why are we talking about it like it's something wrong? Yes, there is a lot which is wrong with this. That is that when we are talking about cultural appropriation, we are leading to cultural erasure. That means traditional symbols, they are not going to be attached to the tradition, they are not going to be attached to the community, and they will lose all the historical and cultural context. That means as the image show, as the image displayed, they will be merely just a costume. Furthermore, you also have to understand the angle of economic exploitation. I started with the example of the price. For a jhumka, artisans will be earning merely in hundreds, at max in some thousand, few thousands. But when we are talking about global brands, they would be making in multiple thousands and probably in lakhs. When we are talking about Kolhapuri chappals, they are placed somewhere in the range of 500 to 1000 in the general price range. The ones which were presented by Prada, they were costing 80,000 rupees. Now this is where the economic exploitation part also comes in, cultural appropriation. And then you have to look at the angle of power imbalance, because this imbalance also highlights inequality. Because global fashion houses, they have the funds, they have the marketing tools, they have the branding, they have the legal protection. So if you are going to pick up something from Prada and you are going to put it out as your own, you are going to be legally challenged. But when we are talking about local artisans, they do not have the funds, they do not have the marketing tools, and they do not have the protection, legal protection as well. And to worsen all of this, if cultural appropriation is not turned gradually into cultural appreciation, that is going to be a problem, because it is going to lead to decline of traditional crafts. Machine production, heavy production from global brands will come in and they will replicate these designs cheaply. Local artisans will go out of work and younger generations would not have anything to pick, and when we are talking about these arts, they will go out of the picture. So as a result, we are not only going towards cultural erasure, we are also going towards loss of heritage, we are going towards loss of livelihood and also loss of cultural identity. And that is the problem with cultural appropriation. Now I just used the term cultural appreciation. So where is the line that we draw between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation? Now let us try to understand that. When we are talking about cultural appropriation, as I said, there is no consideration of origin. But when we are talking about appreciation, credits are given to the culture. Appreciation talks about collaboration. However, appropriation talks about only copying the designs. Appreciation is about sharing economic benefits. Appreciation is about promoting heritage. But when we are talking about appropriation, it is exactly the inverse. So if we will have global brands which will highlight the fact that this is something that is built with India, this is something inspired by Indian heritage, that is when that it will be considered cultural appreciation. Otherwise, if you are randomly putting out stuff from the community, from the heritage, it is nothing but another example of cultural appropriation. Now this is where we also need to understand that what kind of protection our artisans have. So in this consideration, one thing that usually pops into our mind, that artisans, textiles, they usually have GI tags. The government is giving them geographical indication tags. So is that some kind of protection to them? So when we are talking about GI tags, we need to understand that yes, in India, we protect traditional products through GI tags. So if you look at this given map, you will find multiple things. You will find food, you will find beverages, you will find textile also. For example, Madhya Pradesh has Chanderi fabric. For example, if you are looking at Uttar Pradesh, Banaras brocades and saris. Then we have Banarasi glass beads. If we are looking towards Rajasthan, we have Sangneri hand block printing. If we are looking towards Maharashtra, we have Puneri pagdi. So a lot of these examples, this is not the final list of GI tags, more have been added of course, but in terms of textiles, we do have a lot coming from here and there across the states. But does that give them final protection, legal protection? And does this ensure any kind of compensation as well? So before understanding that, let us move to understand regulation of GI tags. So if we are talking at the global level, it is the Paris Convention of 1883 which looks into intellectual property rights and for industrial property. Then we have TRIPS agreement also from World Trade Organization which looks into trade related aspects of intellectual property rights. But when we are talking about Indian framework, we have Geographical Indication of Goods Act of 1999 which was later enforced in 2003. Now what does it do? It gives It gives legal recognition of what? Of the region, that this product comes from this very specific region. So the regional origin gets a proper recognition. Now when we are talking about the department which looks into it for India is DPIIT under Ministry of Commerce and Industry, and if a product is registered and it is given the GI tag, then that is valid for 10 years. Now in this context, yes, the benefit is that there is legal recognition, there will be no misuse of product name, it will definitely give a branding to that product, but the problem here is it only protects the name. That, for example, a specific kind of chappals being produced in that region can be referred to as Kolhapuri chappals. Others cannot be, but the design, that cannot be protected. Any brand can still say that we are inspired by that product and just sell that product. So in this particular case, GI tags have limited protection for such goods. So for India, when we are talking about cultural appreciation, yes, we expect other communities to come together and appreciate, but at the same time we have to put the legal protection also in place. Now this is where the way forward comes in, that what should be done to ensure better protection. So when we are talking about better protection, of course we need to strengthen intellectual property rights with special focus on cultural IPR. And this is where we have to expand the protection given by GI tags. We have to bring in better collective trademarks for crafts. We have to look into fair compensation mechanism for these local artisans, bring in royalty sharing arrangements for the artisan communities. Ethical fashion partnerships need to be promoted so that there can be legit collaboration between brands and artisans. So there is a proper promotion of fair trade fashion, not stolen fashion or not discredited fashion. Furthermore, it can also be looked in the way that we also need to work over the global framework as well, where the role of WIPO needs to be expanded. We need international level protection because these instances are not just occurring inside a nation but at the global level. And most importantly, we need to focus on Indian craft economy. Now, when we were discussing of GI tags, I forgot to ask, can you tell me in the comment section your state and the GI tags which are present from that particular state? Now, that was all from my side. Thank you so much.